Hello everyone and welcome back to Jake's Space. This is my iPhone 15 Pro Max. Is what I would normally say, but it's what I use to film my videos, so I can't show it right now. I got my 15 Pro Max on launch day, so I've used it for about 4 months now, which I think is the perfect time for a little long-term review. So strap in, this is Jake's Space, let's talk 15 Pro Max. First of all, as someone who works in a cell phone store, I feel like it's my duty to address the elephant in the room, most common thing that I hear when talking about the iPhone 15. I heard it gets really hot. Yeah, so that was kind of an issue whenever the phone first came out. It was something connected with Instagram, I think, and maybe some other apps, but it did get fixed in the first week after the phone came out with a software update, so now it is not an issue whatsoever. My phone never had any issues with getting hot, even when recording videos, but for everybody, you're not going to have that issue anymore. Secondly, a lot of people saw Zach from Jerry Rig Everything break the back glass of the phone, and all I have to say there is, have you seen this guy? He looks like he could snap my leg in half if he really wanted to. Now, as Zach always says, glass is glass and glass breaks, and this is no exception. It's still glass, so you can still break it, but I do sit on my phone. I keep it in my back pocket and sit on it pretty much every day, and I haven't cracked it yet, knock on wood, but I don't think it's any issue, so don't worry about that either. As for my personal experience with the 15 Pro Max, I have been extremely impressed. I came from a 14 Pro, but I'm kind of that guy that has to have the new phone every year. I wasn't expecting anything crazy when it came to this upgrade, and there isn't anything earth-shattering when it comes to the difference between the 14 and the 15, but there are some improvements that really contribute to the overall experience. First of all, I love the feel of this phone in hand. The last few phones from the 12 on had the flat sides, and the Pro phones had stainless steel, which looked really great, but kind of dug into your hands if you used it without a case, which I personally like to do. Here they've smoothed out the edges on the sides, which helps when you're holding it in the phone to not kind of dig into your hand the way that the other phones did. And when you pair that with the move to titanium for this year's phone, which takes almost 20 grams off the overall weight of the phone, the feel in hand is greatly improved compared to last year's phone. The cameras on the 15 Pro Max are, like every Pro iPhone, really great. This year's big addition was the 5x telephoto camera on the 15 Pro Max specifically, which is actually the only reason that I bought this phone over the Pro, which I usually get, but more on that later. And the telephoto camera is really good at 5x. It has good clarity and everything, but it does leave that gap between the 2x digital crop of the main camera and that 5x optical zoom. So things in between those aren't going to be as good as on the regular 15 Pro because it has that 3x optical zoom, which means the pictures from 2 to 5x are going to be better on that, but from 5x on are going to be a lot better on the Pro Max. It's still not as good as the Samsung phones, especially when it comes to that digital zoom beyond 5x, but it is nice to have here on an iPhone. The next big improvement this year was the ability to shoot in ProRes log, which is how I shoot my videos. What makes this even better is that with the addition of USB-C, you can actually record directly onto an external storage device that has USB-C. This has greatly improved my workflow of making these videos because I used to have to wait for it to upload to iCloud Photos and then download it on my MacBook. So this is a great improvement for me. If you're not somebody who shoots in log, this isn't going to be as big of an upgrade for you, but it is a really nice feature to have. But, as always, here's a collection of videos and photos from the 15 Pro Max so that you can draw your own conclusion when it comes to the camera. When it comes to performance, there's really not much to say because this is just the most powerful iPhone ever. I'm not really a gamer, but this phone is able to run AAA games on device, and you can connect a Bluetooth controller and even use the USB-C output to put it onto a monitor. Now I have a PS5, so I have no reason to use this because it's just not going to be as good of an experience as it would be on the PS5, but for somebody who would be interested in this, it's a really great option. Regular mobile games run super great. Again, I'm not a gamer, so I don't really play these games, but I use them to test the performance out, and they run flawlessly. Multitasking is also very solid. This year we got the upgrade to 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is a first on the iPhone, and apps stay open in your memory for a very long time, which really helps with switching between apps and pulling up apps that you haven't used in a little bit. Overall, there's really not even much to say about performance, it's just the best. Stay tuned for my S24 Ultra review because that has the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and we can kind of compare the two when it comes to performance. But as far as phones that I have tested, this is the best one. Battery life is like every iPhone Pro Max, really great. It's not like the same level as the 13 Pro Max was back in the day, but it's really solid. I've had this phone for 4 months, and I think I've seen it below 20% maybe like 3 times. And I'm definitely a power user. I'm not babying this thing at all, and it never dies on me. So, battery life, one of the major selling points of this phone, specifically over the Pro. In the display department, there's really not that much of a difference between the 15 Pro Max and the 14 Pro Max. It still has the same 120Hz Super Retina display with a peak brightness of 2000 nits, but the bezels are a little smaller on this phone, which makes the phone itself actually a little smaller and looks better when you're looking at the display. HDR content, regular videos, your pictures, text, everything looks great on this phone. I mean, it's an iPhone. It's got a great display, and it works really well. It's not the best display in any phone. The Pixel 8 that I just reviewed, I think, definitely had a brighter screen. So does the S24 Ultra that I am currently testing. But when it comes to the iPhone, this is the best screen that you can get. So if you're shopping for an iPhone, this is the best one. Now, if you've gotten to this point in the video and you're thinking, this guy's an iSheep, Apple paid him to say this. First of all, iSheep is the stupidest nickname I've ever heard in my life. I'm not an iSheep, if that's what you want to call it. I use both iPhones and Androids, but that nickname is just dumb. Like, who came up with that? That's just silly. But there are some things that I don't like about the 15 Pro Max. First of all, this phone is incredibly slick. The stainless steel sides on like my 14 Pro kind of stuck to your hand a little bit because they were glossy, which wasn't the best feel, but helped a lot when it came to holding onto the phone without a case. The frosted glass on the back is super slick, and then the matte rails, the titanium, are also very slick. So this is one of the few phones that makes me a little nervous about not using a case, and I actually do find myself using a case a lot of the time, which brings me to my next point. This phone is gigantic. And I don't really know how to describe this, but I've been testing the S24 Ultra, and that feels like a big phone that takes advantage of being big. I don't even really know how to describe it, but the iPhone just feels big just so that it's big. Like, I don't think that there's anything that really takes advantage of having such a big display. I have other complaints about the phone. Like I said, the zoom is not as good as the S24 Ultra or even like a Pixel 8 Pro. Those two phones just have better digital zoom and processing. If you look at 5x versus 5x versus 5x on all three of them, they're pretty similar. But when it comes to that digital zoom, I feel like their processing and just the digital zoom in general is just better on those two phones. Last complaint about the 15 Pro Max is the action button. Now, I don't have any problem with the action button itself. I think it's a neat feature, and it replaces the mute switch that I never used because my phone has been on silent for at least the past 10 years. But the problem is that they put it in the same spot that the mute switch was at. So for somebody like me that never used the mute switch, I don't even think about it. And beyond that, it's all the way at the top of the phone, and like I said, this phone is gigantic, which means that it's kind of hard to reach and really kind of robs it of the usefulness because you have to like use your other hand or slide your hand up to be able to use it. I think if it was below the volume buttons, it would be a little bit easier to use. Now, it would also be easier to accidentally trigger it, and I understand that they were kind of going for that muscle memory for people that use the mute switch, but for people like me that never used it, I don't ever think about it. And I really like some of the functionality. I have a menu that has a bunch of different things that I can use it for, but I just never use it because I don't even think about it. With all that being said, I do love this phone. It's my main phone. I always use an iPhone as my main phone because all the people that I talk to have iPhones. So iMessage, FaceTime, the Find My network, all that stuff. I, of course, have a MacBook. I have an iPad. I have AirPods, which are the best truly wireless headphones that I've ever used, especially the Pros. And so the ecosystem is always going to make me use an iPhone for my main phone. But if you're someone like me that is in the ecosystem and is looking for a new iPhone, this is the best one. I mean, there's no way around that. The Pro has most of the same features. It just doesn't have as good a battery life, and it doesn't have that 5 times telephoto camera. But this one has the best battery life. It's got the best camera all around. It's got the best performance. It's just the best iPhone. So if you're somebody who's looking for a new iPhone, I would say if you've got a 14 Pro or Pro Max, it's probably not worth the upgrade. I would just wait for the 16, especially if you're a Pro phone user, because there's rumors that the 16 Pro will get the 5 times telephoto camera instead of just the Pro Max. But if you're a 13 or a 12 or 11 or all the way back, this is going to be a worthwhile upgrade. I mean, like I said, it's the best iPhone. If you're looking for the best iPhone, this is the one. Now, if you're an Android user, there's really one question that you have to ask yourself. Do you really want an iPhone? If you don't want an iPhone, it doesn't matter how good this phone is, you're not going to like it. If you're like an Android only and you're just like, oh, maybe since this iPhone is so great, maybe I'll like it. No, if you don't like iPhones, you're not going to like it. Now, if you have an open mind about it and you're like, well, maybe, you've used iPhones in the past and you want to go back to it, yeah, this is the best iPhone, like I said. I would absolutely recommend this phone to anybody who wants an iPhone. But like I said, if you think that this phone being as the best iPhone is going to make you not want an Android anymore, it's just not going to happen. But those are just my opinions. I would love to hear from you down in the comments. Tell me I'm an iSheep if you want. I don't really care, because that's not true. Or just tell me, things I can improve with the video, different phones you want to see, different video topics you might want to see, and your thoughts on the video itself. Thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. I appreciate you very much, and I will see you next time. Have a great week.